You're very welcome to a new part of the Ready4Raiding strategy guide. In the next few minutes, we will explain a few abilities. To make it easier, we are showing them with an identification tag with the 3 different symbols, which are supposed to show you if these are suitable for your player type or not. Now I want to introduce one of the bosses of the Firelands to you. This is the magma giant Rhyolith. Ryo is big, strong, and most of all, tough. That's why we will hit him on the feet until he walks onto a volcano. That makes him softer, and when he gets all red from the volcanoes, we kick his ass. This is how it looks on the tie. We are riding over this fancy bridge because the Ryo starts walking as soon as we are on the island, and we have to control him straight away. It's best if you gather your ranged and healers in the middle of the island and send the melees toward one of the legs. At the bottom of the screen you can see an additional bar, which is the control element of Rhyolith, which the melees take care of most of the time. The melees run after Rhyolith all the time and keep hitting the leg on the side they want him to move to. Looking at the yellow bar inside the control element, you can see how strong the drift and therefore the attacks are. The whole thing goes down with time, which means you have to hit him consistently so he actually walks into the right direction. You should agree on one leg at the start of the fight, so Rhyolith walks in a circle, ideally. One of the problems here is that Rhyolith should not reach the edge of the island, because he could then bend down and drink some of the lava. He would then spit it out and on us, which causes a lot of damage. That's why we make sure that he keeps walking in a circle, and more importantly, over 1 or 2 of the volcanoes here. The volcanoes pop up at random positions on the island and are inactive at first. You might have seen it already. The Rhyolith shoots at one of those inactive volcanoes and no more smoke rises up but the fire stuff. Beside the optical effect of the fire, there are some meteor-like missiles flying around, which you can avoid. They hit the players randomly and cause an eruption debuff on the player who was hit. That debuff stacks and causes a lot of fire damage. The stack raises the fire damage, which means that the more active volcanoes, the higher the damage on your entire raid. That's why it is particularly important that one of the players announces the spawning volcanoes over the voice chat, so Rhyolith can be sent in the necessary direction. Because when Rhyolith steps on one of the volcanoes, it gets leveled and only an orange crater remains. The eruption of the volcano stops and the raid damage is a lot lower. More importantly, the Rhyolith himself suffers damage when he steps on a volcano, although he is theoretically not attackable during the first or main phase of this fight. You can only hit the legs and they get damage at the same rate as the upper body. The upper body has an obsidian armor buff at about 80%, which gets reduced by 10% every time he steps on a volcano. So you have to get Rhyolith over 8 volcanoes so he loses his armor and gets damaged. After that, it's downhill for him with every new volcano he steps on. And when Rhyolith reaches a low of 25%, the second phase kicks in. We're not quite there yet. I still have to explain a few things during this first phase. The fact that the volcanoes are leveled or flattened does not mean they're not doing anything anymore, because Rhyolith can make a pillar appear out of them. Those look orange-red, and when you see one of them driving up from the ground, you know that within the next few seconds, some lava tubes will appear from them. Which means that from that pillar there will be orange-red lines. If they appear underneath you, you should run away from them. They cause some fire damage, which you don't want to suffer necessarily. The healers will be very grateful. What I haven't mentioned at all yet is what the ranged DPS are doing all the time. The main goal beside the control element, the 2 add types. They should be tanked. We are using 2 tanks here, one taking care of the sparks and one taking care of the fragments. They should be handled differently, as the fragments spawn in higher numbers and use more space. The tank has to pull them together and get them fairly close to the group, because they have to be destroyed by AoE attacks, as they should not live longer than 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, they explode. The damage they strike is related to how many health they had left. That's why it's important to destroy them as soon as possible. If the fragments are not apparent, do take care of the sparks. They show up on their own and have to be pulled away from the group by the tank. They should have a 15-yard distance to the group and also to Rhyolith, so that the melees don't get affected, as they have some kind of fire aura which can cause severe damage that gets higher over time. The longer they live, the higher the damage takes. That was practically all about the description of the abilities in this phase. As you can see in our second try and kill, it can get a tad tight sometimes in regard to the control elements, which is why we supported the melees with the ranged when we were told to turn Rhyolith quickly. That is easily possible, as you can see. You just have to remember to not use dots, not as a melee and not as a ranged, and no AoE attacks either, which could hit both legs. That would completely screw up the steering, obviously. You should only attack one leg directly and precisely. Now, this is phase 2. It's a pure tank and spank phase. That means one of the tanks has to grab Rhyolith and tank him for the rest of the fight. We gather as a group like before, so that the healer can heal more effectively. Rhyolith is driving an AoE attack here, which is causing quite some damage. There might also be 1 or 2 volcanoes, which you, logically, should still avoid. Beside this, you should mainly trigger Time Warp, Heroism and Bloodlust, and hopefully Rhyolith will topple over as fast as he did for us here. All in all, I think this is the easiest fight of this instance. Despite the new steering control, we managed to overpower him in the second try, which shows that it is relatively easy. I hope you will manage just as quickly, and I say goodbye at this point.